Hey guys, it's Anel here. So I finally got around to making some new Xenoblade X content for my channel. So there's actually a lot of stuff to talk about in this video, but firstly, if you have not played X or haven't really experimented with the multiplayer, there's essentially some enemies called Global Nemesis that you can take on with other players. These Nemesis enemies have a certain amount of RP, which essentially just means health bars. Each time you deplete this enemy's health bar to 0, this number is going to be reduced by 1. Now, if you know anything about the combat system in X, you know how ridiculously broken the damage system is. So essentially for this video, we killed the Nemesis enemy Telethia Plume 55,700 times during the 8-minute time limit. So this number actually ended up being the Western record, which we got after only 3 hours or so of practicing. I actually hadn't played on this file in over a year before 2 days ago. Now before I get into anything else, let me explain the start here since everything after is pretty consistent. So my start in this attempt was actually kind of bad, but everything else was good, so it didn't end up mattering too much. Essentially, you want to get in your skull and rush over to Telethia as fast as possible. One of my teammates will topple Telethia while another breaks all the appendages but one of them. I target the final appendage, get out of my skull, and start overdrive. My equipment allows me to gain some count, and I start stacking this up while buffing myself. I'm a little slower in this than I want to be in this run, getting max overdrive kind of late. Now one thing I'm looking for is a green soul voice to use my primer ability on. So soul voices are the B button command prompts in this game, and they essentially give your allies buffs when they use arts of corresponding colors. Primer gives critical power, and I want to get the +1 effect in critical power 6, which is the maximum. I also use offensive stance for the buff to melee art damage and the aura effect, and the support gives everyone potential up and weather immunity. Now the last buff I use at the start that will refresh every so often is combat limbo, which grants stasis. It essentially freezes all of the other buffs you have on your character, so you don't have to worry about refreshing them ever. It is very broken. So once we get into the run, the goal here is to have the support continuously toppling Telethia and granting everyone strong soul voices to buff damage. He also wants to give everyone TP and keep track of a few other things. So the soul voice damage buffs are a strong source of damage increase, giving up to 400% extra additive damage on our melee arts. So you'll notice we alternate between Blossom Dance and True Stream Edge. Ether Blossom Dance is a pretty famous build in this game and probably the most popular. And there's a reason for that. It's some of the best DPS in the game and very strong damage overall. Blossom Dance is a TP art, which means that it scales off potential instead of melee attack, which we stack a lot of, and is the main source of damage we have in this run. Hitting 6 times, with each hit doing over 10 million damage pretty easily. And when we get stronger soul voices, this can go over 15 million. The build is optimized for cooldowns and damage here, and the rotation allows for 7 uses of Blossom Dance and True Stream Edge before having to use Combat Limbo again to refresh our stasis. So one extremely important thing to note here is that soul voices can normally only be taken by one ally. However, the most important part of the strategy and the reason we were able to beat the Western record so easily after minimal practice is the syncing. So what you might notice here is that we are using almost all of our arts at nearly the same time. I am very slightly ahead of my 2 allies on my screen, and because of slight lag delay, they are going to be slightly ahead of me on their screens. What this allows us for us to do is to answer every soul voice given from our support or the other 3 Blossom Dancers. And this extra damage from this syncing strategy allowed us to take the record from people who have been doing this kind of stuff for over a year. Now one thing to note is that if you don't have to worry about syncing, you can do the rotation really fast by overdrive canceling True Stream Edge at the end, which we do a few times, but we also purposely don't Blossom Dance as fast afterward. And we only really do this to refresh our overdrive duration. It's much more important to stay in sync than worry about speed, and overdrive canceling after every True Stream Edge is just more straight on support to get us TP anyway. So there's a lot of factors going into the actual damage numbers, so I'll try to explain that as well. So Ether Blossom Dance is a pretty famous build taking advantage of an ether-based longsword called the Bewitched Glaive for Seeding Rust, and the Core Crusher skill. So Core Crusher is an independent multiplier that gives us 150% additional damage when targeting appendages, but doesn't actually break the appendage. So it is a very strong damage boost as long as we are targeting this appendage. We also take advantage of Overdrive's 500% additive at max damage and the 400% independent damage bonus from tertiary cooldowns of arts granted by Overdrive. We also get another 30% independent damage from Aura Assault, so while we have an Aura active and we have an increase to melee art damage from our Aura offensive stance. We use Fast Forward as a skill to reduce art cooldowns and Secondary Accelerator to cut secondary and tertiary art cooldowns in half. Other small sources of damage are from the Background Noise skill and extra damage from weapon traits on the Rust such as Ultra Mana Slayer and Weapon Attack Power. Augments are used to maximize potential stat, which is what the damage of TPRs is calculated from, and to give ourselves 5 appendage crushers to lower the appendage defense tier to -5 on the appendage we're targeting, giving us a lot of extra damage. Blossom Dance will ignore all enemy attribute resistance, so no amount of ether resistance matters to us, which is one of the reasons it's such a strong art. So now I definitely need to talk about the people who did this with me and who I'll be going for the true world record with in the future, because right now I am definitely the weakest player here since I'm pretty out of practice with X, and these guys are great. So firstly, the support of the group, Abarax. He was actually lagging a bit this run, so not all of the soul voices end up being on Blossom Dance, but that's something that should be fixed in later runs. He keeps Telethia toppled and gives us all TP and really worked to optimize the support rotation, so he's basically the primary reason we can even do this. He also works to keep track of all our buffs to make sure the start of the runs are going smoothly. Super good at the game, has over 5,000 hours, and has killed Lugal Bond over 100,000 times. Next is Void, who was kind of the voice leader during the runs. He's the one breaking the appendages with a skill and counting the arts and getting us all in sync and making sure we all know when to do combat limbo. Very important job, and his micromanaging is greatly appreciated while I'm still trying to focus mainly on getting the rotation and timings into my muscle memory. And lastly, Zander, who's also really good at the game, former world record holder and heavy hitter, and great at syncing up and dishing out a lot of damage for the run. Really good at hitting all the soul voices, which I'm still not the best at yet. I actually really appreciate Void and Zander since they were syncing up to me in my rotations. That was one less thing I had to worry about, but I still had to make sure I followed the rhythm at the very least. Overall, all three of these guys are great. They are already got the 3-man world record, so I gotta do my best not to let them down as we try to beat Japan really soon for this. I'll link all their channels in my description, so be sure to check them out. So there's still a few additional things to mention here. One is that I'm sure this video isn't the prettiest to watch, and that is because of the awful decision to add this ridiculous motion blur effect when using overdrive. I don't know who okayed that idea, but hopefully you're still able to see what's going on in between me and my allies. And if not, you can at least watch the art rotation and the big damage numbers. Damage cap is much higher than it is in 2, and damage can be broken much easier as you can see. Just like overdrive in 2, it also gives even more reduced arc cooldown and resistance reduction in this game, making it very fun to use for very fast combat. There's a lot of really cool aspects of combat in X if you never played, and I hope to be able to show that off in some of my future videos as well. I myself was big into this game in the very early days, also getting the early world record for heavy hitter back when it was a Blossom Dance based strategy. But as of right now, I'm still a bit rusty here, but this syncing strategy is still really cool, and I'm very glad I've got to be a part of it. Other than that, I don't have much else to say about the run. It's mostly just keeping up the art rotation and the sync, and hitting all the soul voices we can for maximum damage. I'll add a few extra comments at the end for advertisement as usual, and if you have any questions about this game or what we're doing, please be sure to ask. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of this run in silence.
Let's do It's time!
Alright then, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video and maybe learned something from it, or at least enjoyed a bit more variety than straight 2 content. Please be sure to check out all the channels of the people that helped me, and check out the viewpoints of their runs as well. Abarax, Void, and Zander all did a fantastic job here. If you enjoyed this video and my commentary and want to see more Xenoblade challenges, guides, or records like this, please be sure to subscribe to me and share and like and comment and anything else you can do to help me out, and I'll greatly appreciate it. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Twitch as well for speedrun updates, because I'll likely try to improve the Xenoblade 2 speedrun and try to get to the Torna run pretty soon. With all that being said, thank you all so much for watching and have a fantastic day.